So, in other words, we're playing a game of poker. This is Danny Gould with the Selling Silicon Valley Group. Welcome everyone to another Silicon Valley Market Snapshot for the second week here in October of 2020. We are in the crux of Q4 now. And before we go into the housing data, before we look at all the fancy graphs and charts and everything, if you are a home buyer in today's market anywhere in the San Francisco Bay Area, and you're looking for a comprehensive data set to help guide you in making the best decision for you and for your family, go ahead and text the word data plus the zip code or area or neighborhood that you're looking in, and we will get you a very comprehensive data set similar to what you're seeing on previous videos. And if you are a home seller in today's environment, now more than ever, pricing strategy is the most integral part of your process. And if you want a comprehensive data set that helps guide you in that manner, go ahead and text the word data plus your property address, that's data plus your property address, to the number down below. It will get you a comprehensive data set that will help guide you in your pricing strategy. Pricing plus marketing equals winning. People that follow my advice, they don't lose. Anyways, into the data, into the numbers, into the facts. And what I wanted to focus on today actually was last week, we dived into the local numbers, and this week I want to look at what's going on across the country and look at the housing market just around the United States as a whole, because what's happening there is really very similar to what's going on in the Bay Area. We tend to be a more exaggerated version of whatever's going on. That being said, and we'll get into this, right? The Silicon Valley bubble, we're insulated here in a lot of ways. We're protected from a lot of the things that could happen in other markets across the country. We're gonna go into some of that as well. But what's fascinating to me is if you look at this graph here, there's a graph that's provided by Realtor.com called the Housing Market Recovery Index, and it shows where we were. There's a score, right, based off of four components. It's demand, supply, pricing, and time on market. And if you look at the graph, you'll see that after shelter in place, after COVID first hit, we had this huge dip in the housing recovery index, or the housing market index, right? That's really what this is. And then this recovery, right, as you see in the graph, we are now at an all-time high for this year, meaning that before COVID hit, we have surpassed what the housing market index showed at that time. Very important, because this graph seems to indicate that we are more than recovered. We have now surpassed where we were, and we are now climbing and in a positive year-over-year state. Very important, because the housing data has shown nothing at this point that we are going to slow down. And if you look at the year-over-year changes in some of the key metrics, we have 7 key metrics. The first is showings, right? Showings year-over-year up 62% year-over-year, meaning that there are 62% more showings happening. Now, it's interesting because there are people that have asked me in previous videos, how are we getting that data? There is an app. There is an app for realtors. It's called Showing Time. Okay, and Showing Time is a scheduling service that a lot of real estate agents use across the country. In fact, some MLSs have actually made Showing Time mandatory or integrated into their showing capabilities on the MLS itself. My team has Showing Time, and we've found it extraordinarily useful in helping our clients schedule showings. But what they take is this aggregate data. This company's been around for a very, very long time, and so they look at how many showings have been scheduled this year versus at this time last year. 62% increase in showings. Buyers are going out there. They're not afraid, right? They're not afraid of seeing the home in person anymore. Couldn't say that at the beginning of COVID, but now we are seeing people going, obviously, in their PPE to the properties and viewing the homes at a much higher rate than they were at this same time last year. Fascinating. When we look at the purchase applications, those are up as well, 22% year over year. No surprise there, with interest rates being as good as they are at record lows. People are going to want to see what they are qualified for, and not only that, they're going out there and they're buying, right? Looking at pending deals year over year, we're up 25% year over year in a lot of markets here in the county, across all Bay Area counties. In fact, we are seeing even greater numbers than that, even greater than the 25% that we're seeing across the country. In many markets here, we're seeing 30, 40, 50% year over year increase in pending sales. That's in juxtaposition to the sharp decrease in demand, in supply rather. And so when you couple those two things together, it's really no surprise. And if you've been watching these videos for any period of time, you've seen that data, you know it to be true, and there really doesn't seem to be anything that's going to slow that market down. Well, we'll get into that in a second, but there might be some things that slow it down, but if we look at existing home sales, meaning resales or homes that are already, I guess, built, right? 10% increase in existing home sales year over year. New home sales up 43% year over year. Builders are cashing in. If you're a builder right now, you are in a really good spot. Very few new home sites across the Bay Area right now offering incentives. Very few. And so it's interesting to see that there's a lot of communities, especially in the exterior portions of the Bay Area, Contra Costa County, San Benito County, where the new home sales are just skyrocketing. Existing home inventory. This is where you see that juxtaposition, down 40%. So sales up 10%, inventory down 10%. What is that going to do to prices? New home inventory down 33%. and new home sales up 43%. What is that going to do to prices? You do the math. Of course, how long will this go on for, right? At some point, there's going to be a neutralization, a rebalancing act. And if you've seen any of my videos before, you'll know that I believe this will continue to be the case until we see some type of either cure, vaccine, remedy to COVID that brings some sense of normalcy back into the environment, right? That's when things could start to open back up, especially here in Silicon Valley, right? Things start to open back up. People start going back to work, deciding that they actually want to go into the office, and maybe they start renting again, or maybe they decide, okay, well, the prices are not so bad here anymore. I'm gonna buy. I'm thinking San Francisco in that case, right? But because the San Francisco market obviously has, if you've been watching these videos, been plummeting over these last couple of months, and so. Again, there will be a rebalancing, perhaps once forbearance ends, right? We'll see maybe an increase in I think that's a given, right? Once forbearance ends, we will see an increase in home sales. But speaking of forbearance, I think it's interesting because forbearance has been something that's been discussed very frequently over the last couple of months here. The number of mortgages in active forbearance has been increasing for 5 straight months, okay? And right now in September, we're at a not 7.9. We're at 3.59 million. That's 3.59 million mortgages in active forbearance. Now, what's interesting is that the argument that I've heard time and time again is that forbearance, once that ends, people are going to go into foreclosure. Let me explain why that's not going to happen. If you look for the vast majority of people that are in forbearance, if you look at, and this, when I saw this stat, I actually had to fact check it. I had to, I triple fact check it to make sure that this is true, because I didn't believe it. 42% of homeowners in the United States have no mortgage, meaning they own their home outright, meaning they have 100% equity. If you look at that graph that's being displayed right now, you'll notice that only 7% of homeowners have less than 10% equity, okay? Only 13% of homeowners have less than 20%, meaning 87% of homeowners across the United States have more than 20% equity in their property. When you talk about foreclosure, you talk about homes that are in distress, sellers that are under duress. Yes, they might be stressed, but if they have more than 20% equity, they're not just going to walk away from the home. They're not going to get foreclosed on. They're going to sell it, and they're going to walk away with the little equity that they have left and go on and live their life. So yes, there is some crossover, I'm sure, between mortgages in forbearance and folks that have less than 10% equity. There is a crossover. And in that crossover, there will be casualties, right? And I say that as carefully as I can. Obviously, these are people's lives that we're talking about, but it's important. It's important to understand the facts, right? It's important to understand the facts because we can, in our minds, hyperbole all day, but our made up reality that a lot of folks have like made up in their head, like this doomsday type scenario. Things are playing out in real time, and they are anything but doomsday-like scenarios for the vast majority of homeowners across the country, and the vast majority of homeowners and home buyers here in Silicon Valley. Another thing that I wanted to cover real quick, one thing that I've heard is, but Danny, what about the unemployment? What about jobs, et cetera? Good point. It's a fair question. If you look at unemployment comparisons across other recessions in the United States in our history, the Great Depression had 108 months straight where the unemployment was under, or it was over or equal to 9%. In 2020, this year, we've only been 4 months. We only had 4 months where the unemployment rate was higher than 9%. We are now at a 7.9% unemployment rate. 5 straight months, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight months of decreasing unemployment. And that should tell you something, right? That should tell you that jobs are coming back. And by the way, they haven't even fully come back yet. I mean, we're seeing a lot of businesses that have not reopened. The only argument that I would make there is, what if a lot of these small businesses never come back? And that is something that is a reality that we will have to face if and when that actually happens. That being said, especially here locally, I just don't see a lot of the businesses that are still unopened or unable to operate in some capacity, that they're employing a large sector of the home buyers in today's environment. Because the reality is that home buyers, or the Silicon Valley housing market, the demand is driven by tech. Right? And we've talked about this. Tech economy has driven the Silicon Valley real estate market now for decades. And as long as tech continues to thrive, so will the housing market. And now kind of bringing it all together and talking about Silicon Valley, I think it's fascinating that housing demand will go down across the Bay Area, especially in the high density urban areas, San Francisco, San Jose, Palo Alto, some of these places, Mountain View, right? Areas that traditionally have driven a lot of traffic, right? Because they are these epicenters for major tech players. And the argument is that work from home is going to become a staple in our society. And while that might be true, I want to share with you, and I'm sure that a lot of you, or some of you, especially if you're paying attention, have seen this. And this is a article just published by the Mercury News, okay? Amazon buys big site near downtown San Jose for web services unit. The article goes on to say, Amazon.com services a delivery and commerce unit, has bought a site near downtown San Jose where a huge industrial center has been proposed. What's clear is that this won't just be robots in a warehouse, says Mayor Sam Liccardo. Amazon is hiring San Jose residents now, helping displaced workers in the city get hired through our Work to Future program. Goes on to say, through leases and property purchases, Amazon units have dramatically expanded their respective footprints in the Bay Area in recent years. Plus, Mayor says, creation of a big-time employment hub in that location with well-paying tech positions can bring these kinds of jobs closer to residential centers in San Jose and potentially chop down brutal commutes to Silicon Valley's more distant tech complexes. So, in other words, we're playing a game of poker. What does this tell us? Because from what we're hearing on the media is that, like, work from home forever. Well, Amazon just made it very obvious that that's not their plan, right? And if you look at Google or Facebook or any of these other big companies, the reality is that we're sitting here in a game of poker, right? And they're all sitting around the table. And if you're betting that work from home is going to be a staple in our society for the vast majority of tech companies, you're greatly mistaken. You're sitting there, and all the tech players, they're showing you their cards. You can't lose. You can't lose. People are literally, they're forecasting. They are telling you what they're going to do. You know what the next move is. The next move is vaccine. Everyone come back into the workplace. That is the reality, right? And if we want to continue to kid ourselves that that's not going to happen, then there's nothing else that I can do to convince you, because this is going to continue to be a trend. Companies are still buying land. They're still leasing properties. They're planning on bringing workers back to the workplace once this is all over. And once that happens, folks are going to need to be back close to work, whether that's in SJ, whether that's in San Francisco, whether that's in Mountain View. You will start to see these markets that are hurting resurge, right? Like revamp. By the way, San Jose is not hurting. Palo Alto hurting a little bit. Mountain View condo townhome sector hurting. Okay, San Francisco right now hurting. Okay, especially condo and lofts and tenant TICs, et cetera. You know, co-ops, all that stuff. Those are hurting tremendously in the city. But we're playing a game of poker right now, everyone, and all the players are forecasting. You know, they're forecasting their hand. They're telling you exactly what they're going to do. And if you can't see the writing on the wall, then I can't help you. But the reality is that tech is driving the industry, that tech is driving the housing market. There's nothing to suggest that in 5 years from now, we're going to have a drastically different working environment than we did pre-COVID. Will it be a mixture? Will some people be able to work remote? Absolutely. Will some people be going into work 2 to 3 times per week? Absolutely. But they're still going in enough to where they're going to need to justify buying a home or living at least semi-close to where they work. And so that's where I'm placing my bets, right? And if you look at the data, I think that you're going to see it the same way. Anyways, everyone, if you are a home buyer, again, in today's market, and you are looking for a comprehensive data set similar to what you've seen on previous videos, go ahead and text the word data plus the zip code or area or neighborhood that you're looking in, and we will get you a very comprehensive data set, very similar to what you're seeing in previous videos. And if you're a home seller in today's market and you're looking for a comprehensive data set to help you price your property and know exactly what your home could sell for in this market, go ahead and text the word data plus your property address to the number down below. This is Danny Gould, everyone, with the Selling Silicon Valley Group, and I'll catch all of you in the next video.